Right, okay. Let's start. Let's hope we don't have any glitches. Right, welcome to the Planning Committee, Wednesday, 23rd of November. And we'll go on to the agenda straight there. Apologies for absence and substitutions. I've got to give apologies for Councillor Martin, who's had a family bereavement. I don't think we've got any substitutions tonight. Nope, and I don't think we've got any apologies. It's full committee. Urgent matters, I know of none. Declarations of interest? Nope. Okay. Matters to be considered in private? None, to my knowledge. Minutes, do we approve the last minutes basically as a correct record? Agreed. Thank you. Site visit attendance, right. Councillor Ball, Councillor Brett, Councillor Mahmood, Councillor Rice, Councillor myself, Councillor Meady, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Mohammed, Councillor Shaw, Councillor Summers. That's the site visit attendance. Okay. I didn't miss anyone, did I? No. Planning application. So we've only got one planning application tonight, which is Ealing Studios on Ealing Green. We have no speakers tonight, either for or against, so we go straight into the report. Emma, would you like to introduce, please?
Good evening, councillors. Item 1 on your agenda is a proposal for the Ealing Studios site with the demolition and subsequent construction of 4 buildings ranging from 4 to 6 stories to provide studio space for film, television, entertainment production, as well as ancillary and associated office work and workshop space. The recommendation presented is to grant the proposal subject to conditions and Section 106 terms and contributions. The existing 1.5 hectare Ealing Studios site, the oldest continually running film studios in the UK, is within the Ealing Green site. While there are no statutorily or locally listed assets within the proposal site, there are 2 grade 2 listed buildings within the larger Ealing Studio site. The sound stages to the west and the White House to the east. The site is also adjacent to a variety of statutorily and locally listed buildings along Ealing Green to the east. Here we can see this site as existing, showing the buildings to be demolished in red and the retained buildings in blue. Again, none of the buildings shown in red are statutorily or locally listed. The proposed development with the central building and block H to the west would provide 7,632 square meters of Class E office, workshop, and studio space. The additional floor space would be facilitated through an increase in mass of the central building, which would be between 22 meters and 14 meters high. Here we can see a comparison of the site showing the existing and proposed mass of the studio buildings. It should be noted that a larger scheme has been previously approved on site. This can be seen here with the comparison between the consented and proposed scheme. The statutory consultation process resulted in 4 public comments received from 4 civic organizations based in Ealing. All comments supported the proposed development. The proposal was also presented to the community and design review panels, both of which were supportive of the application. It should also be noted that the applicant carried out extensive consultation processes before the application submission. The principle of the development is entirely supported by planning policy, as it optimizes an existing business use contained to the existing site within a metropolitan town center, Additionally, the proposal utilizes a sensitive design and siting, protecting against any harmful impact to the surrounding Ealing Green Conservation Area and listed buildings. To demonstrate the lack of impact on the surrounding conservation area, these townscape views show how the building would either be sensitively sited or completely screened from the surrounding street scene. There would be a glimpsed view along the access road to the north of the site, seen here, presenting an inviting and legible entrance to the proposed studio building. While seen from here on Ealing Green, the proposal would be almost completely screened from view. Similarly, from Disraeli Road, where to the south of the site, where the majority of the building would be sited behind the existing offices. The proposed development would benefit from an extremely high quality design and materials palette, utilizing Art Deco inspired architectural details to reference the original design of the surrounding retained buildings and the history of the site. Viewing the proposal within the site context, the setbacks, mass, and fenestration detail of the proposal create a positive and in-keeping impression. These can be seen here, viewing the proposal from the north, looking south. Here we are looking west with Disraeli Road on the left-hand side. Here we're looking north with the listed studio buildings to the left and the proposal in the center. And here we are looking north at the proposed Block H with Walpole Park on the left. The proposed development would have a minimal impacts on surrounding residential amenity. Examining Walpole Court immediately north of the site, the proposed buildings would be set back between 17 and 27 meters. And the lowest part of the building would align with Walpole Court, protecting from an undue loss of daylight and sunlight. Overlooking into Walpole Court would be protected through the proposed roof terraces, which are all inaccessible with green roofs and substantially set back from the surrounding flank walls. The design of the windows with insets and fins would also protect from overlooking. Similarly, residents along Ealing Green would be protected from undue harm to residential amenity by substantial setbacks of the proposed buildings representing a similar impact to the existing arrangement as seen here. Here we're looking towards the proposal from Thorpe Lodge, and here a little bit further south from the rear of Pine Cottage. The existing site is primarily accessed by pedestrians who complete 1,875 of the 2,250 daily trips currently made to and from the site. This pedestrian strategy demonstrates how movement through the site would be facilitated. Parking for 60 vehicles will be provided during non-filming periods, though this would be reduced during filming periods to facilitate larger support vehicles. As seen here, during filming periods, the larger support vehicles would have adequate space to maneuver and arrive to site where they would park up and stay for the duration of filming. Additional benefits of the scheme include the creation of 55 to 155 new jobs during the operation of the studio, an increase from the existing arrangement of between 195 and 365 total jobs. The proposed development is secured as carbon zero and will see a biodiversity net gain of 116.4% because of the proposed green roofs and walls, with a resultant 0.34 urban greening factor, which is policy compliant. In conclusion, the proposed development would support and expand the business offer of the oldest continually running film studio in the UK and a significant creative, cultural, economic, and historic asset within the borough. It is therefore recommended that the application is granted subject to conditions and the Section 106 terms shown on this slide. The member's attention is also drawn to the briefing note, which outlines minor changes to 3 of the recommended conditions. Thank you.
Emma, thank you. Right, as usual, I will go straight to questions, and then following questions, I will go to debate. So I see 2 people. If you can all indicate if you've got questions, please. Carry on, Councillor Ball. Anyone else? Keep your hands up.
Right, that's better. Question arises out of the briefing note, the change to the change to condition 35, the use restriction. Is there a risk that separating it out like that could lead to some of the office space being used for kind of purposes that aren't at all related to the studios, so it's in the original paper we have before us, it talks about film studio use, whereas now separating out the media offices, which is actually the majority of the new floor space. Is there I can kind of understand why that's being done, but is there a risk incumbent in that?
Hold on, I'll take a few questions, Emma. Councillor Summers.
Yeah, it was just a question that arose from Saturday's site visit. You were explaining that there's a demand for film studios and film TV studios, which is why they're doing this rather than digital sort of filmmaking. And you were saying that these new studios would be, large, but not fractionally below the actual sort of industry standard. And I was just wondering, why they weren't, bigger? Would that mean sort of they have to go higher, or is it just there's not enough room on the site, was there sort of pre-planning discussion and they said, oh no, you can't go any higher or whatever? I was just wondering.
Okay, I'll take Councillor Kelly's and then we'll bring you in, Emma. And there's two more after that have indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. Talked about it being a classy application, and so I just reminded myself what that meant. And the list of class E doesn't give film studios as an example; it gives places of worship. And there's that whole thing with film studios. They recreate by definition something else. So they bring in dirt and mud to recreate scenes. So just want to sort of get an understanding of that class. Obviously, it's there now, so I would assume it's okay. Then it brings me to the office space. So is there anything that disallows that office space just going into a different industry? So in 10 years' time, 15 years' time, when Ealing Studios may not be a going thing, could it just become an office block? Is there anything in the application that stops that from happening? And if so, what might that be? Thank you.
Okay, Emma, do you want to take those three? Oh, there are some more indications though after that.
Okay, so Councillor Ball, your question regarding condition 35, and this may end up touching on Councillor Kelly's question as well. So the use class designation for film studio as class E is dependent on the studio space being linked to the office provision as well. So you can't, as soon as there's production space or office space for film production that isn't associated with a film studio, it comes under a different class. So by separating the office space out and saying, based on the business model that's used at Ealing Studios to rent out to a large production company, if that large production company doesn't need a particular office, that can be rented to another media organization that isn't necessarily using the studio space to film in. So they can use it for soundtrack design or animation or any kind of media related use that isn't inherently being filmed on site at the moment. It just allows more flexibility for the provider while also allowing us to maintain that, like you were asking, Councillor Kelly, there's no change within use class E that is not associated with filming or media. So we can control through that condition the use class while also providing some flexibility for the users. Councillor Summers, why not bigger? It's related to the constraints of the site and everything that went on during the pre-application stage. There were lots of discussions on the applicant team of what they needed and what would be acceptable on site. And this was just the size that essentially could be facilitated on site. In terms of Councillor Kelly, your last question in Class E, that is the use class as set out by the use class gazetteer, which is the document that classifies these kinds of things. And the office space is disallowed from being turned into anything else through condition 35, essentially, that it can only ever be used for either film studio space, filming space, and workshop space or media space. related to film production.
Thank you, Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Emma. Because there's one question that comes to my mind when I was there on the day, is that I was a student at TBU, which was now obviously the University of West London. At that time, we sometimes did get to use Ealing Studios for particular reasons, but do their university. I mean, in the same way that I've actually done exams in this building at TBU in Queen's Hall. But I was just interested to see whether or not it was going to be still possible for other people within the community to get to use the place, because I've also seen a very famous comedian do a show there as well. Because looking at what it says here about the use restrictions, it does seem to be quite kind of prohibitive as to what it might be used for. And I don't know how that really works in conjunction with policy 2.5 of the Ealing core strategy here, where it just looks like looking at Ealing Green, we're looking at a cultural and community centre with various functions, including university functions. And so I just seeing really where the flexibility is and where people could perhaps use what is there for other reasons, because it just sounds like it'd be a fantastic opportunity to have even more improved facilities. Thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My question is just about the lights and the assessments on the light. That's in the executive summary. You mentioned that there's broad compliance with BRE guidelines, but then looking into the meat of the report, it actually sort of highlights that in for the cases of the houses that are directly affected, those that are sort of neighbouring the studios there, the cottages and houses that are located along sort of St Mary's Road, that the assessment shows that they'll lose about 20%, which is described as a minor transgression, but that's across sort of 5 or 6 properties. And that's just the assessment on their windows and not on their rear gardens as well. So I was just wondering what the effect is there on the rear gardens and what it would be like, and also just what standard would be expected. You know, how much light would you accept to be lost in a development such as this and still allow it to go ahead? You know, if we're saying 20%, then, you know, is the limit 25% or 30%, where you'd say actually there's a problem with that? So, you know, how's that being calculated? Thanks.
I'm just going to look for any more indications for questions. Otherwise, these will be the last two. Emma. Okay, right. Where you go, Emma?
So, Councillor Rice, to answer your question, the university does currently use the site for its various programs, specifically that office space that's already on site. I know during the construction period, as described in the documents submitted, the students will be able to use the studio stages. So they are currently able to access these spaces. In terms of actual community space and not the education space, because of the restraints on site in terms of the privacy expectations and security that's required, wider community uses can't be facilitated on site, but those education uses are and will continue to be facilitated on site. In terms of daylight sunlight, broad compliance essentially means that the majority of all the windows tested do reach BRE guidance, which is guidance and not requirement. 20% is generally when the change starts to become noticeable under BRE guidance, and gardens only need 2 hours of daylight to be compliant, and they are all compliant. All the gardens are compliant. So those are, in terms of, BRE standards.
So
do you want to come back, Councillor Shaw?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So just on, so 20% is about the sort of dividing line, if you like. That if it was 25%, then you would be sort of saying actually that's a bit too much.
So I'll just come in here. So under the BRE assessment, it assesses the amount of light currently reaching the windows, currently penetrating into the habitable rooms. And that's an important point, is the habitable rooms as well. And the 20% mark is that's when that change becomes noticeable. So if they have existing of 70% and that drops to 50, that's when the change from existing to proposed starts becoming noticeable. So beyond that 20%, you're correct. That's when we start to look at it in a bit more detail. And, if it becomes 40%, 50%, that would be a significant reduction in daylight. But 20% we do look at as acceptable.
Okay, right. I think we've exhausted the questions. So I'll just move into debate. Anyone indicating to speak? Please show. Councillor Rice first. Keep your hands up, please. Carry on. Sorry, Councillor Rice.
Yes, sorry, thank you. I didn't know if my microphone being on would interfere there. I just really love the look of the proposed development. I mean, what does really stand out and impress me is that just a few weeks ago, I was on the double-decker bus on the top going down Hanger Lane with my family, including my two little nieces. And I was very excited being able to point out all the different buildings that I'd been involved with giving planning permission to, saying there's a school and there's all the housing and everything else, and just that I'm going along the way. But what I didn't realise was that when my sister just looked to one side and saw Ealing Village with all the kind of 1930s look of that, and just like, wow, she just loved the look of it. And so I know that kind of style really does mean something to people still after all these years. And so I think it's just very attractive that it just really, and it does very much, it does pay a lot of tribute to all the work that's gone on though over the decades, Reading Studios and making this place famous. And so I really do hope that it gets the opportunity to thrive even further with the new developments. So I'll be voting in favour. Thank you.
So before I go on, I've got Councillor Ball, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Brett and Councillor Conti indicated. Anyone else indicated? Sorry. Right, sorry. Anyone else? Oh, right, okay. Okay, right. Councillor Ball.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Rice that it's a very attractive Art Deco design. We often on planning committee, we criticise kind of bland designs of a lot of the buildings we get, whereas this is, it's really, really top quality design and really appropriate for the studios, taking into account the history of the studio. So I think that's very much to be welcomed, and I approve of the scheme in general. I guess my only concern was that the office space could end up being used for other purposes. I think I'm happy enough with the wording of media offices, but it is something that I think the council ought to make sure that it's used for purposes that do relate to filmmaking in the broad sense, even if they're not productions that are actually happening at the studios. I mean, media offices could be a book publisher or something. It could be something that's completely distinct, which would be unfortunate. I think really what we want to see is the whole site being used for purposes that relate to filmmaking. But yeah, I'm very happy. We saw on the site visit that the buildings that are being demolished are of very little merit. So whereas the new designs are great, so it's definitely a step forward. Yep.
Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a bit of what's been said. I mean, architectural styles or people's preferences for architectural styles can often be overstated, but I think it's fair to say Art Deco seems to be well liked, well respected, and stood the test of time. And certainly in this borough, we've got some great examples. Ealing Village, the Hoover Building. So yeah, more of that the same. There is an inherent challenge about keeping specific film studio stuff in film studios. It is going to be a challenge, but I think one of the ways of overcoming that is to actually have the right type of stage studio space for the office space. There's 10 miles out the road in Ivor Heath, there's the second biggest film stage in the world. I think it's, or in Europe, you know, the 007 stage in Pinewood is massive. It's the size of 3 football fields. You know, that's not what they do at Ealing Studios, you know, so we mustn't second guess the industry. They're the type of studios they want. They're the type of studios they've applied for. So we have to take them at what they want. So I'm minded to grant this application.
Okay, so Councillor Brett next.
Yeah, thank you. Probably echoing what's been said previously, but I think it's a really excellent application. I think the architecture is fantastic, and I am also really pleased about the jobs that it potentially can bring to Ealing Borough, and also that it continues to cement Ealing's, you know, kind of legacy of filmmaking. So I'm definitely inclined to support this application. I think it's a really positive one for the whole borough of Ealing, not just Ealing Broadway. So thanks.
I sense a consensus coming towards me. Councillor Conti.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'll be repeating what's already been said. So I'll be supporting application too. I think for what's already been outlined in terms of the look of the building, the style, it's also very sympathetic to the area in terms of the impact on the surrounding area. And it's sort of in keeping with the history of the site in terms of the way the new buildings have been developed. And I think it's actually a lot of other developments or other proposals could learn from what's being done here in terms of its approach. So I'll be voting in favour.
Okay. Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with any colleagues here. I think what this is a modernisation of dated studios and an update that's probably needed within the industry, and to keep the business going and thriving. And the queries over the office space. I mean, Councillor Kelly posed the question of what if the studio isn't a thriving concern in 20, 25 years' time. I think the hope is that with this application and by allowing this to go ahead, that the studios does remain as a thriving and going concern, and it will hopefully secure its place well into the future.
Councillor Gordon, please.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what everybody else has said. It's an excellent application. Very interesting, all the different community groups support or are neutral on this, which is fairly rare in my experience of reading planning reports. That's very encouraging. Very generous section 106 allowances as well. So echoing everyone else, I fully support it.
Right, I don't pick up. Oh, Councillor Summers. Yes, it better be.
A very, very small point. I mean, I echo what has been said before. I asked on the site visit on Saturday about the construction because I'm concerned that the construction might disrupt the existing work, but they are quite happy that they can do that without disrupting the existing filming, and also very happy with the condition that vehicles, will be leaving in a forward gear, because obviously it's quite a narrow entrance and exit. But delighted to hear that those big film lorries will be coming out forwards.
Okay, right. There's so many echoes in this chamber. I'm going to go straight to the vote. So all those in favour, please show. Right. Okay. Right. Just to be clear, all those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. And that concludes the evening. The next planning committee is, where do I see that? Wednesday, the 14th of December. So you can have your mince pies that night. Okay, thank you very much. Great.